Welcome to Baseball Biz on Deck. I'm Mark Harbert, your host, and with me today is Mr. Matt Germain. Because when we're talking about anything with the Tampa Bay Rays, Matt is on top of it. So really, this is his show anytime we talk about the Rays. So raise up to all you fans out there. Matt, how you doing today, my friend?
I am living the stadium dream, I guess. That's the new big name going around for Tampa anyway.
I mean, man, you and I have had this conversation. I can't tell how many times, about when are we going to go? Where are we going to go? When's it going to come up? Jeez, crackers, man. I'm done with it. I kept looking, see, what is it? We had a lease with the Trop through 2027.
Yep.
How long does it take to build a stadium? I mean, we barely got time to do that, don't we? Jeez.
It's right on the edge, I think. Like 3.5 years is a good amount of time because I guess that's what you would need for it to be ready for the spring. Hopefully they'll let us know tomorrow when they'll get the shovels in the ground and get working.
I don't know, man. It has been such a roller coaster ride. I don't know if I'll miss the uncertainty or not after tomorrow.
Yeah, in a way, like it's been great advertising for them. Like, and it's kept them in the news in a lot of years that they might not have been anyway.
Yeah, like I said, I continue to get more calls and more questions on that than just about anything. But it has been an exciting week for the Rays. Look at this, man. We're down to the last 2 weeks of regular season. Man, did this come up fast or what?
It came up super fast.
Oh gosh.
Feels like August, September flew.
Yeah, I mean, after July, long dreading July of just slogging through, week bad game after another, and then coming back, through August, and now looking, pretty daggone good in September. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But I want to see, as far as where things are going overall across both leagues. I'm going to kind of go down the rundown here. I'm looking here at the standings. And if we look at the American League, bang, not surprising, AL East, Orioles and Rays. The Rays are 2 games back from getting the East. And the funny thing is, too, I think the Orioles still have to play 2 more games this year than the Rays do.
Yeah, and that's going to wear them down, to be honest, for the playoffs. Like, I want to say wearing down. Their pen, you could tell even against the Rays, and they was used quite a bit. They're going to be worn when they get into the playoffs, I think, on that end.
Yeah, I see. I was doing a little math here earlier. Orioles are in the middle of a 17-game stretch without a break. And their last off day was Thursday, September 7th. And their next one won't be until Monday, September 25th, so a week from now. Wow. Let's see who the Orioles got. They'll still be facing Houston Astros and the Guardians. That's going to be on the road. And the last leg of their season is going to be 6 games at home, 2 with the Nationals and 4 with the Red Sox. So they'll be able to catch your breath and face 2 teams that aren't the most stellar of the bunch, the Nationals and the Red Sox. But the Red Sox have been playing better off and on, I guess. So I don't know. We'll see how that goes for them.
Yeah, the whole, looking at the schedule and just guessing that they'll dominate this or dominate that or get, the power schedule sort of thing is such a farce when it comes to baseball, because really, you can have a team come out of nowhere and be hot just that 1 week and really squash your plans. So when I look basically at the schedule, in my opinion, the Orioles have it toughest of the what I call true contenders, because they have so few days off and
Gotcha.
Their rotation is already thin and it's already filled with young players who are maybe out of gas heading into the playoffs. So I think there's a good chance that they're going to be an early out, even if they do make it into the playoffs. Now, having the first round bye would go a long way to helping them out on that end for sure. But I mean, I think that's why the Rays pushed so hard in the last game to get that win, because they know what was at stake. And when I look at the rest of it, though, just to continue on with that, you have the Jays who are facing 12 games of the Yankees and Rays. And that is not good for them because they suck against the AL East or East in general teams. So I think there's a potential for the Jays to end up getting squashed out because of their divisional opponents. And I think that the Rangers, in theory, have the better chance to squeeze ahead of them. Whether or not the Mariners can stay hot enough and maintain momentum to also be ahead, we'll see. But it's nice to have a race that goes down to the wire like that.
Yeah, I mean, the AL West really does have a lot of strength there. I mean, while you got the Astros, they're a game and a half ahead of the Rangers. I mean, the Mariners only a game behind the Rangers. So, geez, that's tight. So let's see, wins there. Rangers have 81 wins in the second spot on the AL West, and the Mariners are 81. Guardians, who are second in this AL Central, only has 72 wins. But Blue Jays with 83, yeah, it, like you said, depending on who they're playing and how they fare there, I don't really see that by any kind of shoe-in for them whatsoever. I would be very entertained if we had three teams from the AL East coming in there, but I don't think it's going to happen.
But the other thing to point out too is that the Astros are still playing for something, and so they're facing the Orioles the breakaway, and the Orioles are gassed after a long weekend with the Rays. Yeah. And so if the Astros could pull off a sweep of the Orioles, that changes everything when it comes to the Rays in the division. So I wouldn't count out. I know that the feelings from the Rays side of things was like, oh, we missed out on a huge opportunity, but it wasn't the only opportunity. If the Rays get hot enough, especially against the Angels, and are able to sweep it, and then the Orioles, get swept, even if they lose 2 of 3, then all of a sudden the Rays are back in it, and it's an edge, to edge sort of thing. And I would love to see that, because I think both those teams deserve it. They both earned it all year long. They deserve to have that attention drawn on them. And I think there's a lot to say about playing for something towards the end when you get close to the playoffs, and it translating into the playoffs, so you're at your best of your game.
Well, I'm excited to see where this is all going. Want to talk more, obviously, about the Orioles and Rays, but let's jump to the National League for a moment and see how things are going with them. It's been interesting to watch the Braves because they've just leapt up, above everybody. I mean, they're at 96 wins, a 644 win percentage. Boom. They're right there. The Phillies who are behind them are 15 games back. You look to NL Central and you see the Brewers, they only have 84 wins. And beneath them, the Cubbies at 78 and the Reds at 78. Wow. You go down to the NL West, the Dodgers are going to take that with 91 wins, but the Diamondbacks have 79. So let's take a look then. You got Diamondbacks with 79 wins, Cubs, Reds with 78, and the Phillies with 81. So it seems like the Phillies are going to be there. And then what? Between Cubs, Reds, and Diamondbacks, I don't know. We'll just have to see how those play out.
But let me ask you a question. So we know that the playoffs are a new season, right? You get in the playoffs, and then it's all about the 3 top starters you can put out there, and the rest, producing enough to maintain whatever those people do. So if you were a betting person and you were forced to bet only on the starters, would you choose the Brewers starters or the Braves starters?
I'd go with the Braves.
Really?
Yeah.
I still think I go Brewers if they're at their best, because to me, I look at Corbin Burns, I look at Peralta, I look at the the return of their other ace, is what I call them. So I mean, you've got 3 really, 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 really tough guys. I know the Braves, if you're counting on Charlie Morton to be the playoff Charlie Morton, that's definitely a huge thing. But I don't know. Just when I omit the lineups, right? I just say, based on the pitching, I would still give that edge to the Brewers. Now, if they don't, then they're in trouble, because I don't think their lineup's going to produce a huge amount. But yeah.
Well, if you look at current history, you're really there, because I have been watching the Braves over the last week, and I was like, okay, well, the Braves lost Friday. They lost to the Marlins 9-6. Saturday, they lost to the Marlins 11-5. Yesterday, They lost to the Marlins 16-2. Hello. Right now, they're playing the bottom of the fourth. They're playing the Phillies, and the Phillies are ahead 4-1.
Mm-hmm.
None of these things sound like reasons to have to see a strong Braves, I guess, in the postseason. I don't know. There's merit. There's merit to what you say.
Right. Well, so I always like to pair them up and say, okay, this guy against this guy, that guy against that guy. So when I look at the Braves and Brewers, I say, okay, from the month of August onwards, Freddie Peralta and Spencer Strider are about the same value in terms of how they've performed, being ace caliber guys. If I were those teams, that's who I would throw in the first game. So then you have Max Fried against Corbin Burns. And I'm like, okay, well, that's also a fair match, but I would give the Corbin Burns the edge personally, especially in big games. I think he has a little bit more moxie to him than Max Fried does. But Max is solid as well, so it's like an edge thing. It's a prefer, who do you prefer sort of thing. But then you would have maybe Charlie Morton go up, right? And that's where the argument can become in terms of on the Brewers side of things is who's going to hold the fort after those top two guys, and who are they going to give it to, and are they comfortable with what they have? With Brandon Woodruff, is he at his best? Is he still finding his way back? And in my opinion, he's back. So if that's the case, because of the youth and not having as many innings pitched on his arm this year, I think he's fresher. So I give them the slight edge a little bit. And I'm like, okay, well then you're just talking about, depending on when they meet also. I'm guessing that they're going to be in a 7-game series
Wow.
or, a lengthy one. So it's one of those interesting questions because you get, everybody has their preferences. And I think when you look at Adrian Hauser as the potential fourth, that gives the Brewers an edge, I think, over what the Braves have to offer. So I give them the edge just on pitching. Lineup wise, by far the Braves are, it's not even a contest. I do think the Brewers adding Josh Donaldson gives them a little bit more of a, could he get timely hits in the playoffs? I think he could, assuming that this calf issue he's always had holds up. But I think that, to me, that's the way I see the playoffs rounding out. I think right now would be the Braves and Brewers on one side, and the Rays and that's a good question. Who's going to face on the other side? I don't know. Yeah,
it's going to be an interesting postseason. There's no doubt about that. Well, let me ask you one more thing. Is why we're talking about the Brewers and the Braves. I don't know enough on this one, so I'm going to ask your help. The depth on the bullpen for both of those. Which one has the strongest bullpen?
So the Braves did something very interesting, and they kind of threw a lot of darts out, and they brought in guys like Nick Anderson and all that. They kind of spread a wide net, is what I would say, in terms of the trying to build something that would be resembling a powerhouse for the end of the season. Now, whether or not those guys are fresh, I can't really tell you, because I think you do have to pay attention to how guys look at the end of the season, not just at their overall stats for the year.
Right.
And a lot of people get into that trap, right? In terms of, oh, well, look at this guy for the year. He's been that. Well, yeah, but what's he been like since August 1st? That's when you can really tell whether or not a guy is on. Like, if you look at the Rays, for example, if you only watched Colin Pache through June, you might have not have been a fan. If you've watched him, all year round, and you've seen the way he's looked at the end of the year, then you're like, he's one of the best guys you want on the mound right now. So when I think of the Braves and the Brewers, I think they're both in good shape. And I don't think one has a clear edge per se. What I would say is that the way they're used and when the triggers are pulled probably gives one team the edge over the other more than anything else. So it's based on the managers. I think Craig Counsell is very smart in how he uses his personnel. But I don't think either one has an edge, to be quite honest. So I would make it even.
Well, thanks for that, because I didn't have enough depth on their bullpens to say much of anything about that. But coming back to the Rays and Orioles, like I said, you and I talked about this before. I had a good fortune of actually going up to Baltimore and Camden Yards and seeing a couple of games. They had a 4-game series Thursday through Sunday, and it was interesting to begin with. I got to tell you, Karen and I, we got there. We flew up Thursday morning and Friday morning, rather, and we got everything unpacked, headed to the stadium, had the gear on. You got to represent. I was not ready for the booze when as I walked into the stadium. Giant. Now, imagine I got the TB hat, the big TB shirt on there, but and it wasn't like several people, but there were spots where people like point and say "boo, boo." So okay, dude. Oh, but I said passionate fans, and that particular game, they had 47,000 people. They had, I think it was 47, 43, whatever capacity was, is where they were at. And it was huge. It was like walking through, I guess a construction zone on the interstate. There's nothing but little orange pylons everywhere. But seeing all that orange, it was blinded by it. My mind couldn't even conceive of another color with all that orange. Scary.
Yeah. That reminds me of when I used to go to watch the Boston Bruins, and they used to only have condiments that were yellow because they wanted everything black and yellow, and the seats were yellow. All the jerseys were black and yellow. You felt like you were just drowning in it. So that's awesome, though. That's real fandom, and it's good as long as it's clean.
Well, and it was a nice, clean place. Udall Street was neat to look and go down. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe more of a Louisiana, New Orleans vibe down Utah Street, but it was really cool. The people, all in all, were very nice, and like most ball fields, the food was expensive. I thought I was at an airport; it cost so much, but it was fun. And quickly going to that food thing, I noticed when I was at Fenway, I was surprised their prices were much less than what I was finding at a lot of other ballparks. Like I said, not something
I
normally.
agree. I love it, and it's the good stuff. It's like the hot nuts. It's the I don't know, the fries and the popcorn and everything else. The Cracker Jacks. Everything has the old school kind of baseball feel to it, which I love. I don't know. You want to be able to buy it, and you want to be able to have the traditionals, right?
Exactly. And that's what baseball is all about, is color and things being different. And you talk about diversity, boy, from park to park, from fan to fan, you're going to find something different, whether it's the depth of left field or the mascot or just the manager. There's always going to be something that's colorful, unique to each one of those stadiums. It was, like I said, I hadn't been there before. So it was interesting me watching those hits going out to left field, knowing that if they hit that wall back there, it would have probably been a home run a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And it's funny because you mentioned that. When I went there, and I was there for the last weekend Jeter played in Baltimore, and I was actually sitting in I went to all 3 games, and I was sitting right where the seats they took out for one of those games. And I remember because I sat down and I was squeezed in between 2 Jays fans.
Oh, God love you.
So it was pretty funny to all of a sudden be getting haggled by all the Baltimore fans, but I had 2 Jays fans to blame instead.
Nice buffer. Oh, yeah. But taking a look at some of the games here, they're like, we've got such talent pitching. I mean, I've always been a little hesitant about Aaron Savale. I thought, he's kind of good. He's real good other days, and others not so much. But he was facing off against Kyle Bradish on that first game with the Orioles. But I got to tell you, the highlights for me too is looking at the youth of that Orioles team out there. Seeing people like Ryan O'Hearn and Gunnar Henderson, putting up their home runs out there, and then also seeing another key part of that game was looking at the Rays with Stevenson. He got his 400th career strikeout during that game. There's always something to find at a game besides the final score to entertain yourself with.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Like I know right now I'm sitting on Yandy Diaz. His next double puts him within, I think, within the top 10. I think he's 10th right now. It'll put him ninth. And then he also is 6 hits away from being in the top 7 when it comes to hits for as a Ray. So he'll be just behind is it Kevin Kiermaier, I think. So there's a bunch of like, I think didn't Brandon Lowe just have a milestone as well with
Yeah, let's see.
I can't remember what it was.
Hang on.
He did. He just had one. So there's always milestones and things that you look for because I think what's hit me more this year than any other year was how long Diaz has been with the Rays now. It seems like just yesterday he was traded for Bowers, but really it's been long enough that he's starting to creep up into the upper echelon of Rays lore when it comes to certain statistics. So I don't know if he'll end up playing out the entire contract that he signed with the Rays, but I feel like I want to see that and see where he gets, over that period of time as a Ray.
The guy sitting next to me during the Saturday game, he said, "Well, who is your favorite player on the Orioles?" I said, "Well, that's Cedric Mullins." I said, simply because it's historical. Okay, there's probably a lot of these other young ones I like, but there's something about a guy who's been there for a while. Because you were talking about Yandy, and he asked me, said, "Well, who's your favorite Ray?" And I had no hesitation to say Yandy Diaz. I said, Randy for color. If I just want to say color with the team, I said, what that man does, the entertainment value and everything else he brings. I said that. He said, well, I thought you'd say something about those two Lows. I said, nah, they're both very well. But I said, there's nobody really overall for the time that he's been there has the plate discipline that man has. He gets on base for a reason. He makes sure he'll walk. He'll take a walk. I don't think he wants to, but he'll take a walk. And I've got a lot of respect for him for that.
It's funny when you ask that because I was thinking the exact same thing when when they announced the stadium. The first automatic thing I think of is, okay, well, now you're a Rays fan, you can go out and confidently spend money on a jersey. And I was like, okay, whose jersey would I buy right now?
Yeah.
If I had to? And that says a lot, right? That pretty much means, okay, if I'm buying this guy's jersey, it's because not only am I a fan, but I'm also pretty positive he'll be there for a lengthy period of time. And to me, right now, I think I would lean more towards Isaac Paredes than anybody else. I know Josh Lowe is young, controllable, plays solidly, and he has that kind of personality that the Rays are attracted to because he's a team player, supports everybody, he's very cohesive. So I could go that way as well. But if I was to buy a jersey right now, I think I would go with Isaac Paredes because I think he can reach another level and become elite across the league to the point where he's one of the top third basemen in the league in all facets, not just, not in speed, but I mean, when I say all facets, I mean defensively and offensively, where everything he does looks smooth. His plate discipline has the potential to be like Diaz, but with the ability to draw more power out of it as well, to the point where the production he's going to put up when he's in his prime, like 3 years from now, is going to be ridiculous. So I think he's probably one of the most underrated players in the league right now, in my opinion, for many different reasons. But another one is that he's so calm and he does the same thing every game. And he does what you're going to get out of Isaac Paredes every time he's there. So I don't know. The personality thing is very interesting because, Randy Arozarena brings a lot of positive energy and energy in general to the Rays. Like he gives them that identity that, a lot of teams might be missing. Like if I told you on the Marlins right now, who's the Randy Arozarena on that team, it'd probably be like Jazz Chisholm, right? Somebody with the flair, somebody with that's kind of unique, talks to the fans, he's boisterous, he isn't shy. So I think it's important to have a variety of personalities on the team. That's what the Rays' strength is right now. They have variety. Everybody will have a favorite player. Probably all will be different, but all for great reasons. And that just means you have a great team to cheer for, which is a great thing.
as you were saying, personally, it's definitely make a difference. And Randy, it was fun to watch him. He was interacting with the fans out there in Baltimore. He was there before the game or even during the game. People creeping up next to the dugout and getting him to sign things. And man, it's always, he's got like a smile on his face. But then you were talking about Isaak. Isaak's kind of the quiet guy. And I think I felt that same way about Yandy long ago. That's why I feel like a lot of times Yandy and Isaak were not necessarily being hyped up with the media because they are so quiet. They quietly get there,
Right.
the at bats, the number of times they're on base, etc. And if they don't have all that color, they don't make the news. And suddenly says, "Wait a minute, I'm seeing these numbers come up from somewhere. Who is this person?" Well, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but but game 2, that was the first night Karen I win, and that was a fun one, man. Rays beating the Orioles 7-1. Wow. At the beginning of this year, when I went to the Rays Fan Fest, I said, "Who's that dude guy and his wife walking that small child around her?" "Oh, that's Zach Eflin." "Oh, he's the new." Yeah. Wow. Zach just completely was crazy that night. I mean, I think he threw 84 pitches in 7 innings.
Yeah.
60 strikes. That man was on fire. It was just amazing to see the kind of talent, that he has and what he was bringing out there.
If you look at this season and complete to this point, he is the most important Rays player overall. He's been the steady force. He's been there every 5th game. He's, in my opinion, he's in Cy contention. So he's like within the top 5. He's going to get Cy votes. He's got the most wins. He's got the most, not only wins, but he also has the most games where he's eligible for the win because he threw enough innings.
Right.
So there's no other pitcher in the American League that's actually qualified as many times as he has. And I think there's been very few clunkers. Even when he's off his game, he still keeps the Rays within that game. And there's something to be said too about the attitude and the confidence and the honesty with which he speaks when you hear him being interviewed and like, "Yeah, I didn't have anything today. I completely sucked. I'm surprised I got off the mound, in that inning or whatever." But it's also great to see the love he has for the team, the appreciation for the franchise, the pride for that franchise. I tweeted after that game that I think, if you tell me that he's going to play out his career with the Rays and he's going to become their pitching coach, I think that is perfectly feasible. And I would actually promote that as a possibility to him in the future if he does stay healthy enough to kind of get him there. But that's exactly the kind of player the Rays need and should keep long term.
Well, it was amazing to watch him do that, I have to tell you. And you're talking about the type of player he is, the energy he has, self-effacing. What was it he said in one of the games recently? He said, "Yeah, I felt like I was standing naked on an island with no sense of what was going on around me." It's like, geez.
I love it. It's awesome. It's a soundbite forever.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the idea that Zach actually hails from Orlando, just down the road. Yeah. So he grew up watching the Rays. The Rays have only been around now for 25 years. So they're at that age where children who watch them can actually be on the team now that are as adults. This is pretty cool. But that was.
Shane McClanahan would be in the same kind of boat, right? Where he's young enough to have grown up that way.
Yep.
I mean, Florida's a strong enough baseball, state where you have to imagine that a lot of them are growing up Rays or Marlins fans, for sure. Or, they adopt one of the spring affiliates or spring locations in that team. It could happen, I guess. But yeah, that's the one sad thing I will say about the stadium that I tweeted out earlier today. I was in part hoping that the Rays would go to the Tampa side because I wanted that Yankees affiliate out of Tampa. I would have forced them out. There's a rule in Major League Baseball where you can't have, an affiliate within a certain number of miles. So now because they're going to be in St. Pete, that's, they're going to get to stay there, which I think is a thorn in the Rays side forever.
Yeah. Yeah. I can tell you being down here, I've been over to the George Steinbrenner Stadium over there, and it's I'd love to see that as a facility for the Rays, or at least a location for the Rays. Being over working in Ybor with the museum, the baseball museum too, it's just that's where you're talking about early on, putting it over there in Ybor, downtown. And I'm hoping and praying with this new stadium, and when they get this thing, that they've got something figured out on people getting there and parking, because it is an absolute beast. And that's another thing I'll say about Baltimore. I was, we Ubered to the stadium. Actually, we didn't Uber. We walked, but I didn't really see parking around there. But there also seemed a steady flow of people coming in and out of the place. They had things worked out there. I'd like to sit down with a plan of both places, of what, like with Camden Yards, because it seems like they're doing so many things right, and say, hey, if all of this works here, what can you take and transpose that into Tampa that will make a better fan experience, for the Rays?
Right. That's three big questions that I have. Well, four big questions I have about the stadium in general. Is first, are they going to have any natural light? Or is it going to be some sort of fade, right? Where you don't really see the sky? And number two, what is the governor of Florida going to do to get in the way, if anything? Right. That's my second one, which ties into a lot what you're talking about, because to me, this is a development. It's not just about the Rays. It's about developing that entire area. So in my opinion, I hope when they announce this, that they say, yes, there will be transportation issues addressed, and we have a plan. And I would hope that, Stu wanted that as part of the assurances. But yeah, I also think the multi-use aspect of everything is going to be a big part, and it's going to play. And that's what the last thing I'm looking for is whether or not it'll be usable as a soccer stadium, how many bars and restaurants are going to be open all year round and not just when the Rays are playing. Because to me, if you're putting a restaurant in a stadium, why do you lock it up and close it like when the games aren't on? Just have it, to the outside and keep those restaurants going all year round. But hopefully the plans that they have in place make sense. And I would imagine if they're spending 1.2 to 1.5 billion on this place, that it's going to have some sensible decisions made, you would hope.
Yeah, I do hope that's the case as well. So there's lessons to be learned from a lot of the different stadiums, and I'm sure that Stu and company are putting in place. God knows they've had enough time to think about this. All righty. I tell you what, we're going to go ahead down a little trick of the different games this past week with the Orioles. Game 3. Now, this is the one where you were not asking. You were talking about Brandon, and was it Saturday? Yeah. Brandon Lowe. He had his 500th game, his 500th career game on Saturday. I don't know if that was the stat you were thinking about, but
it's off of I think it was off the home run he hit. Might have been, I don't know, but that game was very frustrating, because it's one of those things where there isn't much Tyler can do when he doesn't have all his secondaries. He doesn't have many. So if they're not working, he's in trouble. And we've seen his fastball hit well enough that he can't really hide from his secondaries anymore. He has to have the feel for them, or else he's in the world of hurt. Still made it through 4, but I think the game was pretty much, punted by then. So I'm sure that's one of those games that you sit through in Baltimore and you're like, like you just want to move on to the next game.
Oh my gosh, yes. I cannot tell you how difficult it was to watch Glass now. Just some wild pitches. It didn't seem like he had his control. And anytime I had a camera shot him on his face, after he just looked completely distraught after somebody to get a hit off of him. And it was not going to be his night. You knew early on, said, yeah, come on, let's turn it around. Let's turn it around. But being a fan of the game itself, instead of just being a fan of the Rays, it was magnificent to watch Grayson Rodriguez pitch for the Orioles.
Yeah.
Gosh. I mean, 8 scoreless innings. Mm-hmm. But Matt, the speed that man was able to channel over and over consistently. And by the same time, also being able to put that ball exactly where he wanted it at the speed. It was just numbing. My eyes would go up, to the screen each time to see, 98, 98, 100. Okay. He was staying up there with each one of those pitches. Bam, 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 bam. And it was just, there's a reason that we lost the Orioles 8-0. And that man was a big, big part of it.
So I just want to paint a picture based on that game, right? And what we saw later on as well. But let's say you're the Yankees, right? And you know what you have in house. And you're sitting there and you're watching the Orioles trot out Grayson Rodriguez. And then they have, kicking things off Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman, right? So you're talking about, future all-star catcher, shortstop, and ace, right? Mm-hmm. And then you're looking at your roster and you've got Jarrett Cole costing you God knows what. And, he has an opt-out. So he's going to cost you God knows what until he's 39 now, because you're going to have to pick that up. They have a clause where he can opt out or try to opt out. And then they say, no, you're staying with us, but we'll give you an extra year. It's in his contract.
Wow.
So then they're stuck with him until he's 39, which is going to cost them, he's going to break down at some point, right? And then you look at their catcher situation, you look at their shortstop situation, you're like, they're not even in the same tier. They're 2 tiers apart, if anything. So, and then you talk about, who's coming behind them. And we know who that is, right? And so they have the best prospect in baseball coming behind them, who is going to either force Gunnar Henderson to third base, or he's going to move into to third base himself. So I don't know. When you look at this weekend, that's what I was looking at, because the Rays were trotting out 4 to 5 players each night that were from their AAA roster. So to me, it was a half and half roster. It was half Rays, like regulars, and half of it being AAA players. So they weren't even using their full, what I would call ammunition, that they could. They were resting guys, that guys on IL. There was issues there. But you still look at those 2 teams, and they're all putting up great at-bats. They all had great youth, control. They're sticking around for a while. So if you're the other teams that are out, like the Red Sox, the Yankees, even the Jays to a degree, because they're getting older, they got contracts ending. It's just one of those weekends that made you see, the next 3 to 4 years are just these 2 teams. There's no contest really in the AL East. And it's a beautiful thing to see, because if you've lived through years like we have, or decades of Red Sox and Yankees at the top, to me, this was the weekend of, we're in September, late in September, watching something else that matters than the Yankees and freaking Red Sox.
Thank you, brother. Jeez.
I loved it. I ate it up. Like you said, it's about the game, not about the outcome.
It was. I mean, I really did enjoy watching the game. It hurt. It was great to see. Let's see what we got here. Any notes from the folks at Baltimore? It said Rodriguez improved to 6.4 in the season after working a career high 8 scoreless innings on 5 hits and 7 strikeouts. He fanned Curtis Mead on a 100-mile-per-hour fastball in the second inning, the second fastest strikeout by an O starter in the StatCast era, since 2000. He owns top 4 spots in 10 of the 11 fastest punch-out pitches in this period. Holy sheesh. His 117 strikeouts this season are the 10th most by an O's rookie, and most since John Means fanned 121 batters in 2019. At 23 years of age, he'll be 24. Man,
scared the daylights out of me, though, in a way, Mark, because I think back to when Shane McClanahan first came up with the Rays, and that's what he was doing. He was doing the same exact thing. And where is he now? To me, I watched him really dominate through the first half of the game, and it was a complete contrast of, okay, Tyler Glasnow has learned that you can't go out there and throw 101, 102 and do it consistently and stay healthy. On the other side, you had the guy who's still going to learn that at some point. And he was gunning, like you said, 97, 98, almost every pitch. He was barely using his secondaries until he got to the 3rd inning, 4th inning. So that's a lot of pitches at that speed over and over and over again. That torque on that arm is just, I feel like if they're not able to get him the confidence they need in the secondaries to kind of ease the wear and tear on his arm, it's going to be a disaster at some point within the next 2 years, and he's just going to break down like all young pitchers seem to do at this point. It might be really bad timing for the Orioles if they're in the position we think they're going to be in.
Well, I hope the Orioles manager Brandon Hyde and the front office thinks about that, because what you said is absolutely true. I mean, like you said, you could compare mound to mound, whether it was looking at Glass now that night or Rodriguez and saying, this could be you. This could be a mirror into the future. I said as much to the gentleman sitting next to me, the O's fan at the game. I said, they need to make sure they take care of that arm. And it's crazy. Here's where we find the stat you were looking for, I think, on game 4. What happened then? There's something with, I know there's something with Brandon that day. I'll dig it out in a bit here.
I can't believe I can't remember it.
He slugged his 21st home run of the season in the first inning. He marked the 105th homer of his career, surpassing Carl Crawford for sole possession of 6th place on the Rays all-time home run list.
That's why I couldn't remember it.
Yeah. Marked
his
he's marked his 202nd career extra base hit, tying him with Fred McGriff for 8th most in team history since 1998. Woof. But Sunday, I didn't stick around to see this game. I was constantly checking my phone. And geez, my knees. I thought we have to win this. We're going to win this. And it's just moved on and on and on. I mean, 11 innings, and we lose 5-4 to the Orioles. That was a hard one to watch.
The most frustrating part of that game to me, and I was sitting there going, why are we doing this right now? Because Pete Fairbanks has had touch and feel issues, because of the condition he has. So the longer he's out there, even if he's throwing a long inning, he tends to lose the feel on the tips of his fingers. And so to see Kevin Cash use him for a second inning for the first time of the year in September against the Orioles, to me is baffling, especially when you have a healthy, strong, dominant Sean Armstrong sitting on the bench. Those are the kinds of decisions that still make me question whether or not Kevin Cash can get the Rays through to the World Series and win it. I don't know, because there's certain things that he does that are baffling, and I don't know who's recommending him. I don't know why he goes there, why he changes the program. The pen hadn't given up runs in forever, and I love the decisions he made before that. Having Robert Stevenson out there first because of where they were in the lineup made complete sense. Yep. Having, everything lined up after that was perfect. All he had to do was call Sean Armstrong on for the 9th instead of going back to Pete. That's the part that I really don't understand. And then pitching to Adley is an arguable one. I mean, they'd had some success against him before in the series, but to me, he's one of the few guys that seem to be, really getting into it. Him and Gunnar just were like, okay, if you have first base open and it can add an out, option when you're pitching to the next guy. And Santander has been really struggling against the Rays. So I thought those were the 2 mistakes where the Rays could have won the game. And if they had won the game, it would have given them 11-6 record for September instead of a 10-7 record for September. And to me, that goes a huge way. Not the end of the world. Hopefully it's a lesson learned and they kind of look back on it afterwards and go, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have done that. I'm just more hoping that it didn't do any damage to Pete and that his finger issue doesn't get aggravated from it. And then he's good to go for the playoffs. More than likely, they were like, we have an off day tomorrow anyway. First one they'd had since August 31st. And they were like, okay, well, we know we can rest everybody. So we're going to go for it and have them out there again. But I still think there's one thing you don't want to burn out at the end of the season. It's your top, back end guys in the pen. Yeah. So I think I would have done it another way.
Yeah, I was a little surprised to keeping Pete out there for 2 innings. And I mean, he had a couple of days rest, but still 2 innings is a lot to ask him. I look at him and I say, That's the one inning assassin. You put him out there and he kills it then. And
Right.
if we know the cold weather is not his friend, but still it didn't work out. So I'm glad they got the day off, Matt. I mean, I'm looking at this, like you said, the Angels coming up. That's interesting. What, we got 3 games. They're going to be here for 3 games. I talked a little bit about this earlier. And then the Blue Jays are going to be here for 1, 2, 3 games as well. What do you think it's like being an Angel right now with Ohtani not even sitting on the bench?
I look at, if I'm a player on the Angels, I think like, wow, I'm going to have every opportunity in the world to show what I have and earn an MLB reputation. But I think the owner has a lot of looking in the mirror to do and deciding what he wants to do going forward. I think some, like, their fans will probably split half and half, right? Half probably appreciate the fact that they went for it, they didn't sell out, and they'll kind of use that as a reason to love and support the owner and the team. The other half will be like, this is never ending. This is ridiculous, and I want a new owner no matter what. I feel for the team. I feel for the fans. I feel for Mike Trout, who's dealing with his own health issues, and now Ohtani with his own health issues. I really hope that, when they do trade Mike Trout, and I think it is going to happen at some point. I don't know how much they'll be able to get for him, but they need to have a completely new scouting and evaluation staff that they actually listen to. I don't know where the disconnect is, and I know even Perry Managian has made some really baffling, moves. I get where they were going with things, trying to deepen the roster and get guys that can do key things. And they've tried a lot of different things, but the one thing they never tried was going after the top pitcher in any free agent class. Like, why not?
Yeah.
And way back when it started, like, this is not new. This is like 8 years ago. You're talking, over and over and over again. They completely ignored. I think even during when Jarrett Cole was a free agent, I was screaming for them to sign him, and he ended up going to the Yankees. I said he made way more sense for the Angels way even back then. So imagine if something like that had happened, where they signed Jarrett Cole instead of going after, I don't know, Anthony Rendon or whoever else they ended up signing. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's that organization has an ownership problem, and it happens in a lot of different sports where they get a little bit too involved, or I don't know who's advising them, but it's one of those things where you feel for the fans most and some of the players in their careers. Because it is, it's a big thing. I remember as a hockey fan, Ray Bourque being an example of Mike Trout, right? Where he was on a really terrible team for a long time, and then they were competitive here and there. They made the playoffs once in a while, but I think people forget how terrible the Boston Bruins were for a long time. And then finally he got traded to the Colorado Avalanche and ended up going to win a Stanley Cup with Patrick Roy over there. And watching him lift that cup and the smile on his face and that achievement being so huge to a guy who had done everything right in his whole career, but just never been able to reach that. That's what I want for Mike Trout. I want him to get that chance. I don't know if it's in Philly or somewhere else, but I hope he's healthy enough to get to that point with another team. It's not going to be with the Angels. I think the Angels are in a 7 to 8 year rebuild, to be quite honest. Unless something surprises from what they have, because they have no system. They basically, like, I could put every single player from the Charleston River Dogs in ranked above anything they have in their system. Like, it's insane how thin they are overall. So
wow, Matt, a little love, buddy.
I laugh when I see their system, and I think they're a baseball team in the major leagues. Really? Like, how did you get to this point? So I know I'm being harsh, but it's true. You can go through all their players or prospects. They're guys you would never even pick up if they were on waivers for the most part. Like, you just wouldn't. The Rays don't have space for any of them. I don't know. Like, I don't know what you do. How do you start? Even internationally, let's say you wanted to build like through the international program. Who have they ever signed on the international market that would tell you they have the scouts over there to actually do that? They don't. They have to build it from scratch. So I don't know. Like the Orioles learned that recently, right? They started amping up their international scouting and signing some guys. The Angels still haven't. They don't do it. So I don't know how you rebuild they need to find somebody that's like Alex Anthopoulos and will actually rebuild their entire organization scouting like he did in Toronto. Because
Yep.
when Alex Anthopoulos went into to Toronto, he rebuilt exactly how all their scouting happened. He had central guys, he had everybody piecemealed in a lot better fashion, a lot more of them, and he picked the best, paid them more so that they would have the best of them all. So, and it changed that entire organization for years. They dismantled it a little bit since, but I think that's what they need. They need somebody to go in there and clean house. I don't know who they get to do it.
I think Chaim Bloom is available.
It's not a bad idea. Actually, you know what? He's probably learned a lot of lessons. He's motivated to prove himself. And if he has somebody, if they're willing to be patient with what he's going to build over there, I that's a really good point. I think that would be a really great move, Mark.
Well, think about it. I mean, they brought him in with the Red Sox, and they knew they wanted him to make unpopular decisions. And whether Mookie and David Price, those were decisions that they said, we're not going to do this. Let's bring a new guy in. He can take all the stigma that comes with this. And like you're saying, if you need somebody to upset the apple cart and trying to get to the future, maybe he's the guy. I don't know. I wish him well. But to your point on Mike Trout, yes, I want to see the man on a team that can win the division, can win the pennant, go to a World Series. He's an athlete who has given so much to the game, but he's with a team that's just not going to go there with the management style they have. And Matt, I truly believe Major League Baseball should have to have mandatory counseling for owners who can't seem to tell their one end from the other. They got to find some way to guide these through a business 101 class or something, because you see the decisions that they make. And, obviously I'm not sitting in the back room with how they're making these decisions, but sometimes it seems like they're throwing at a dartboard for a decision.
Yeah, and they're not alone, right? There's I know we talk a lot about them, and I think we're all frustrated about it because we all wanted to see Mike Trout, and I think that's the attraction that there is to that, conversation for the Angels side of things. But there's other organizations that have been terrible for just as long. Like you look at what the Blue Jays are going through. Yes, they've been in the playoffs a few times here and there, but with the amount of money and resources that they've thrown at things. They lived through a decade of darkness under JP Ricciardi. That was ridiculous. The Marlins have had a hard time getting back in this swing of things. They're starting to get there now.
Yep.
I think the Pirates are finally coming out of the woods, but they had a very lengthy period of time. Like there are certain teams that have had to learn the hard way. I think the Pirates are a good example of what the Angels could do, right? Where they got Ben Cherington in there, they got a bunch of really good baseball people, and they were patient with what they were building. And now you're seeing the fruits of that labor. So hopefully it's a good example for them to kind of, sell it to the owner there and get him to change.
Well, let's take the last final look at what's happening with the Rays then. So we've got the Angels, we got the Blue Jays twice what's these last 2 weeks, and the Red Sox. So looking at this with those few games, what do you think the Rays are going to be able to pull together?
I can see the Rays, maintaining about a 600 win record. Now, whether or not that's able to kind of get them, about, let's say 7 out of 11 they have left. So I think it's one of those things where is it going to be enough to get them past the Orioles? I don't know. I think they're going to be a little bit more concentrated on keeping everybody healthy than trying to push for more than that.
Right.
Do you think the Blue Jays always seem to have, like, if they're going to have a bad series against the Rays once, they usually have a good series the next time. So I think the 2 series against the Jays will balance themselves out somehow. If the Rays do end up dominating, then that's just because the Jays are putting so much pressure on themselves that they fall apart, which could happen as well. You never know.
Yeah, they've had some rough patches this year.
Exactly.
And Alek Manoah hadn't helped any of that, but Let's
And
see.
I'll be honest though, Mark, like I think playing the card series is good for the Rays. I don't see it as a detriment at all. I think the baffling thing with Major League Baseball is that they've set up a system that hurts the teams that get the buys instead of helps them.
Because of
Because
what they're sitting on their hands or what?
yes, if you talk to baseball players, they get all out of sync. Anything more than one day off, and they're like almost starting from scratch. They're not, and if you give them 3 days off, 4 days off, like, all of a sudden they're lost. They don't know how to do their feel is completely gone. I don't say completely, but you know what I mean? Like there's certain things that are so habitual and so muscle memory that any sort of out of syncness just hurts them big time.
Jeez.
Um, I don't know. It's kind of I'll be intrigued to see if another team can do what the Phillies did last year, because if they do, I think it'll be a selling point for is it so bad to play the wild card instead of not? No, not really.
Well, I'm looking forward to it either way, but I definitely see your point there. I always wonder about that too, just sitting still, waiting for something to come. But I'll come up with a kind of a last post here, unless you got some other things you want to chat about. And that is, again, looking at the stadium of the future. Did you realize, I just came across it earlier today, that there is a special virtual game, a virtual ballpark that fans are going to be able to participate with this Wednesday?
No, I did not
Okay.
know that. I'll be
Okay.
honest.
This is an article I'm reading from a site called Engadget, and it came out last Thursday. Let's see, it's a short one. I'll read it to you. Major League Baseball is ready to test its virtual ballpark for a regular season game. Fans can enter the digital stadium on Wednesday, September 20th to watch Tampa Bay Rays host the Los Angeles Angels. The league debuted the digital park earlier this summer for a celebrity softball game during the All-Star game activities. I haven't seen this thing yet. Next week's game will mark the first non-exhibition game to
Oh no,
deploy the
I'm not.
metaverse. To deploy the metaverse like digital park. So it's a 3D representation, with on-field avatars and all of that. I can't imagine what it's going to look like. But I'm going to see if I can find some place to watch this because it sounds interesting as heck.
Yep, that definitely does sound interesting for sure.
Yeah, maybe there's a few last things we can learn about a new stadium from this virtual one where they have the game coming up. Oh
But
gosh.
I've always thought this, and I like the games they show on Apple TV, right? I'm a big fan of the picture quality. I don't think the a lot of the broadcasters are always the best format, but I've always been intrigued by whether or not MLB TV should have cameras set up at key areas in the stadium where you can just watch the game, not hear anything else, and be like as if you were in that screen. You hear all the sounds, because Apple TV does that up here in Canada. I know in some areas they have ads that go on when they're in between innings, but in Canada you get just the camera stays on. You hear all the same noises if you were sitting in that seat, and the play goes on, and the players are doing whatever they're doing. The grounds crews are doing whatever they're doing. It's like you're at the ballpark. You don't get to talk to anybody next to you, but you still get that same feel as if you're at the game, which I really like. I enjoy it.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, my friend. I'm looking forward to this last 2 weeks of the games. And I dig what you're saying about the postseason being a wild card, that it keeps the team sharp. So if we get that one position, well, I guess we'll start the first of the two games here. And that looks like if the Orioles do win the division, we would be the top dog as far as a wild card to be able to have the at-home advantage. So it sounds good.
Definitely. I'm still curious whether or not there'll be one or two roster moves made, that like tweaks here and there. Like they just added Tristan Gray to the 40-man roster. Is there another one or two moves they'll do like that? It'll be interesting.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Tristan Gray. I can't speak. I'm glad you brought up Tristan Gray again, because I don't think I mentioned. I don't know if we talked about it at all about his venture into the game. I think was it on the Sunday's game. While things didn't go well for us, he really did pretty good. He had what? It was at his first major league hit.
Yep, it was his first start, and he made a really nice defensive play early on in the game, which was great. Then he had a really solid at bat, saw a lot of pitches. Showed some poise in there, being able to foul off a lot of tough ones. And then he got his first major league hit, and you're like, okay, well, now he gets to relax. And I guess relax he did, because he showed off his power in a big way. 415-foot home run to center field to, at that point, put the Rays ahead by one. I thought it was huge. And it showed, Tristan Gray is one of those guys that has done everything right. Like since he's gone to the Rays, he's gone down to Australia in the winter. He's added all those little things. He said yes every time they wanted to move him positions, first, second, third, shortstop. He's improved his D significantly since he first got to the Rays overall. So when you talk about, having assets that can fill the gap when Wander Franco is out, this is why the Rays are special, because they have those players like Tristan Gray who can come in, like Oslevis Basabe. And then both of those guys are going to be intriguing and asked about from teams like the Marlins, for instance, if they're looking for a trade and to make roster moves because of the roster crunch that happens with the Rule 5. I could see either of those guys being asked about by the Marlins and other teams.
Well, again, I'm glad to see people like him come up, and the way he's handled himself, his willingness to take whatever position and to be training off season elsewhere. Later on, I'm going to talk to you after the show, not today, sometime soon, about the Australian League, because we know so many players are either evolving up to there, like Curtis Mead, or a lot of players who are going there, as you mentioned in the past, to during the off season to stay fresh and learn new things. So anyway, enough of all of that. Matt, is there any other final thoughts or you'd like to share with everybody?
Yeah, I would just ask fans, like, I know there's a lot still, like, even with the stadium announcement going on, there's still a lot of bitter Tampa side fans that wanted the stadium to be there absolutely no matter what. And I would ask those fans to contact their counselors and let them have it, because they are the reason that the Rays are not going to the Tampa side. If those Yankee fan counselors were not, the people in the city in Tampa obviously are leaning Yankees completely. Yep. So in my opinion, that's the only people that you're allowed to be mad at this point, are the ones in charge of the coin that decided to go with the Yankees instead of the Rays, and you can point the finger at them. After you're done doing that, please embrace the Rays in St. Pete. They're your team now. They're not going anywhere for a quarter, century at least. So, dive in, buy some jerseys, go enjoy them a few times a year if you can afford it, and support them.
That's wow. It. Well, that's a good attitude to take toward, and it's also good to point out again why one of the reasons why they are not going to be moving to Tampa. All righty. Well, Matt, thanks again, brother. Always glad to have you here on the show. And that's Mr. Matt Germain. That's Matt, MAT _ Germain, GERMAIN _ So if you're looking for him, that's where you find him on Twitter at Matt _ Germain _ Oh, man, I tell you what, it's been another fun week. We'll have to talk again here just before postseason and, bang the drums and see where we're going to be.
Absolutely. I'm up for it.
All right, man. Thanks again, and look forward to talking with you again real soon.
Me too.
Special thanks to Matt Germain for joining us here today. Just remember, you can find Matt on Twitter at Matt, MAT _ Germain, GERMAIN _ You can find me, Mark, at the BaseballBiz on Twitter, and you can also find me at BaseballBiz, www.baseballbizondeck.com, and anywhere you like on the directories, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, etc. So until next time, thanks again, and we look forward to talking with you again real soon. Special thanks to XTakeRUX for the music, Rocking Forward.